So we're going to talk about adnexal neoplasms. So the talk is like divided into multiple cases. So you have all the cases were like case 1, case 2. So this is the first case. So clinically, these lesions, they present like these multiple papules, mostly on the nose and around the cheek. When you look at a slide, so what we see is this endophytic growth. So like whenever you're describing a slide, you have to first describe what is the type of growth actually. When you're talking about a growth pattern, is it a nodular growth? Is it an exophytic growth? Is it an endophytic growth? Because if you put all these words in your report, it makes more sense to the dermatologist. So when you talk about this one, you'll say section shows skin with an endophytic growth pattern of basaloid cells. So what we see is an endophytic growth pattern of basaloid cells. And these, when you go high power, what we see is the basaloid cells, what we see is peripheral palisading. So what do you mean by palisading is when you see all this forming like a fence around the basaloid nodule. So you have this peripheral palisading. Sorry, you saw the diagnosis. So what is your main differential diagnosis here?
Not basal cell carcinoma, right? Because
so like the first thing that should always come to your mind should be basal cell carcinoma because of the basaloid growth pattern. Because that is the most common thing that you're going to see in the skin. Now, why is this not basal cell carcinoma? So like the important thing is to remember what are the features that I need to see to make the diagnosis of either this is basal cell carcinoma or not basal cell carcinoma. So like as a dermatopathologist or as a pathologist, when you're practicing, basal cell carcinoma is going to be a very easy diagnosis. Because you don't go in and look at the slide very carefully, but next time whenever you see a slide of basal cell carcinoma, pick up the slide and go down carefully and look at all the features. Why? Because those are when we'll talk about those features. So when you're looking at something like this, which is not a basal cell carcinoma, you will be able to then say, why is this not a basal cell carcinoma? So what are the features that we're talking about? So in a basal cell carcinoma is composed of basaloid cells. So this is also composed of basaloid cells. A basal cell carcinoma will show peripheral palisading. So this is also showing peripheral palisading. But in a basal cell carcinoma, the important feature is the clefting around the palisade. So you'll see a cleft that appears between the palisade and the fibrotic stroma. So there is no clefting here. So that is one feature against basal cell carcinoma. When you look at the basaloid carcinoma within the basaloid cells, you're going to see a lot of apoptotic bodies and mitotic figures. And within this basaloid nest, you don't see any apoptotic bodies or mitotic figures. So that is another strike against basal cell carcinoma. When you look at the stroma is very fibrotic. It is not myxoid. So that is another strike against basal cell carcinoma. So you are ruling out the most common diagnosis. So what are you looking for? 1, peripheral palisading. 2, clefting. 3, presence of apoptotic bodies. 4, presence of mitosis. And 5, what is the kind of stroma? So you always, whenever you see a basal cell, these are the questions that you ask yourself every time. Do I see this? Do I see this? Do I see this? And then you can rule out or rule in basal cell carcinoma. So once you have ruled out basal cell carcinoma, then you start thinking of the other uncommon things. Because if you see like 100 cases like this, 95 are going to be basal cell carcinoma, and then only 5% of cases are going to be other things actually. So one is a tricholemoma. So how do you make the diagnosis of tricholemoma? Let me show you an actual slide of tricholemoma. So here is an actual slide of tricholemoma. So again, like low power, you can see like it is a endophytic growth pattern. And then you go high power. And the same, what we talked about. So is there peripheral palisading? Yes. Is there clefting? No. Is there any apoptosis? No. Is there any mitotic figures? No. Is the stroma myxoid? No. So you rule out a basal cell carcinoma. So what are the features of a tricholemoma? So tricholemoma is composed of these basaloid cells with clear cytoplasm, has the peripheral palisading, and another very striking feature is this thickened basement membrane that you see around the palisade actually. So instead of a clefting, what are you going to see? You're going to see this thickened basement membrane, which is like a pink hyalinized membrane that you see all around the hyalinization. So you see this thickened basement membrane. And this is composed of these clear cells. And where do these clear cells come from actually? So these clear cells are coming from the outer root sheath of the hair follicle. So when you look at a hair follicle, the hair follicle has this outer root sheath, and which is composed of this clear cells. So this is a neoplasm of the hair follicle, which is developing from the outer root sheath. Your main differential diagnosis is a basal cell carcinoma. Any questions about this one?
So how do you
The
differentiate?
other question that can come on your board is the relationship to Cowden syndrome. So tricholemomas are very common in Cowden syndrome. So they could ask you, give you a slide like this, and then ask you what is the syndrome associated with it. So Cowden syndrome, or what is the mutation associated with it? So P10. So remember Cowden syndrome, P10, tricholemoma. Moving on to case 2. So again because we are in the chapter of adnexal neoplasm, you see this big proliferation in the dermis composed of what? Composed of glandular-like structures. Sorry. So when you go high power, what do we see here actually? Oh, sorry. So these glandular-like structures, they are composed of this lining that is very similar to the epidermis. So look at this lining and look at this lining actually. Very, very similar. Very similar to the epidermis, and these are actually dilated hair follicles. So these are not glands but dilated hair follicles. And on low power, and so look at these are like dilated hair follicles. And very characteristically, when you read about this entity, they will talk about like these structures looking like spectacles. So if you have an imagination, you can view these as spectacles actually. So this is one ear and this is the other glass of the spectacle. So when you read about these, you'll see about the spectacle. So a glandular-like structure with the lining that is very similar to the epidermis. What is your diagnosis?
Trichoadenoma or something?
Yeah, trichoadenoma. Very good. So this is a trichoadenoma actually. So why is it called trichoadenoma? Because it is a glandular. What is an adenoma? Adenoma is a collection of glandular structures actually, and tricho means hair. So it is a collection of glandular structures that are coming from the hair follicle. And these are all keratin debris, and then these are all the very important feature to always look for is, does the lining match the epidermis actually? So that is a trichoadenoma. Let's pull up a slide now. So like same collection of glandular-like structures in the epidermis on low power. When you go high power and you look at the lining, it is like the lining also. Look at this lining and then go back to the epidermis. And look at this epidermis actually. Very, very similar lining actually. It's almost like the epidermis is like encircling this follicle, but they are composed of this glandular structure. So this is a trichoadenoma. And then you can always imagine all these spectacles or owl's eyes. So these are like a spectacle actually. So trichoadenoma. Case number 3. So a very sharply demarcated lesion just above the upper lip. So what do we see here? Again, a basaloid neoplasm. So again, this is a basaloid neoplasm. You can see all these basaloid structures that are. So whenever you see basaloid neoplasms, the first thing to always think of is
Basal cell carcinoma again.
Basal cell carcinoma. 95% of cases are going to be basal cell carcinoma. So we again, like this, the features that I talked about: basaloid neoplasm, clefting, peripheral palisading, apoptosis, mitotic figures, and stroma, myxoid stroma. So what is the kind of stroma that we see here? Is it myxoid or is it more fibrotic?
Fibrotic.
More fibrotic actually. So and then we go high power. Do we see any clefting?
No.
No. Do we see any apoptosis?
No.
No. Do we see any mitotic figures? No. So all these features tell you that most likely I am not dealing with a basal cell carcinoma. So that is ruled out. So now what is the other thing that can look like this actually? Sorry. So let's go low power. On low power, what do we have? We have a lesion that has, the better thing is let us pull out a slide actually. Okay, here's the slide now. So when you look at this slide, it is composed of this basaloid nests that are infiltrating. The other very important feature to look at low power is it infiltrating to the lower part of the biopsy or is it like limited? So this is more limited. If it was going to the base of the biopsy, what would be the other main differential diagnosis that you would not want to miss? Microcystic adnexal carcinoma. So if you have I'll show you a slide of that, but in a microcystic adnexal carcinoma can look very much like this, but it goes to the base of the biopsy. So that is your main differential, the other main differential. So basal cell carcinoma, this is a trichoepithelioma, so trichoepithelioma and a microcystic adnexal carcinoma. Now why is this a trichoepithelioma? So what are the features? So one, it is composed of these basaloid structures, but then you see again the similar structures that you saw in the trichoadenoma. You see this hair follicle-like structures. So these are known as keratocyst. Kerato is keratin and then cyst. So you have cysts that are composed of, that have keratin within them. So a cyst-like structure that has keratin in them. So that is known as a keratocyst. So you have this keratocyst admixed within the basaloid neoplasm. So, and the very fibrotic stroma, and then we already talked about all the features of a basal cell carcinoma, how you rule that out. So when you see something that looks like a infiltrating basal cell carcinoma, but has this keratocyst admixed within it and does not have all the other features of basal cell carcinoma, your main differential diagnosis is going to be a trichoepithelioma. So this is a trichoepithelioma. Now, as a pathologist, when you are in practice, you might get a person who does a biopsy that is like this actually. They do a superficial shave. And you don't see the base of the biopsy. So then how do you make sure that this is not a microcystic adnexal carcinoma, because those are more aggressive. So you don't want to miss that diagnosis. So if you have a dermatologist or a physician that sends you a biopsy that they have shaved it from like this actually. So all you have is this superficial part of the biopsy. So in real life, what will you do in that case?
Talk to the clinician.
But like, what will you talk? What will you talk to? What will you say to the clinician?
But
that you cannot rule out a microcystic adnexal carcinoma because you don't see, because they're going to look exactly like this. So you can't rule it out. So you have to tell him. So what, like, I'll tell you what we do actually. So what we do is, if we get a superficial shave from here, we sign it out as a sclerosing, because the stroma is very sclerotic. So we call it sclerosing basaloid neoplasm, extending to the base, see comment. So very important to remember, because you're going to get cases like this definitely in your practice, at least one a year, where the clinician has actually just done a superficial shave and you cannot rule out a microcystic adnexal carcinoma. So how do you sign out those cases? You say sclerosing basaloid neoplasm, extending to the base, see comment. In the comment you say that although the features look like a trichoepithelioma, I cannot rule out a microcystic adnexal carcinoma, go back and rebiopsy. So in short, you're going to go to, you might not even want to put the trichoepithelioma. You might just say you cannot even rule out an infiltrating basal cell carcinoma, go back and take it out. what is more important is you have to ask the clinician to go back and make sure that the entire lesion is completely excised. So if you see something like this, which is a infiltrating basiloid neoplasm but doesn't have all the other features of a basal cell carcinoma, your main differential diagnosis is a trichoepithelioma and a microcystic adnexal carcinoma. And for a tricho, both of them are going to have the keratocyst, but the microcystic adnexal carcinoma, as the name suggests, is very infiltrative. It is a carcinoma, so it is going to be very infiltrative and going almost up to the subcutis. And this one is not going to, it is like up to the mid dermis actually.
So Dr. Singh, can there be a differential of syringoma here if it is a superficial biopsy?
Syringoma, what is a syringoma? Syringoma is an eccrine neoplasm. So eccrine, what is eccrine? Eccrine is a glandular structure. So what you're going to see is collection of glandular structures, not keratocysts. These are hair structures that you see here.
Okay.
So if you start seeing hair structures, then it is not a syringoma. We are going to look at a syringoma, but I can show you a syringoma right now actually, and then because you see this and then you see that. So like look at this. This is a syringoma now. So we don't see any hair structures, but what you actually see, these are actual glands. So these are actual glandular structures, because eccrine is the eccrine duct and the eccrine what do you call it? Yeah. That is actually a glandular structure. So you're going to see collection of glands in a syringoma, but you don't see any keratocyst or hair cyst or anything like that. So these are actual glandular structures that you are going to see within the syringoma. See all these are actual glands. If this was not the skin, if this was the GI, what would you think of this one? This is actually a glandular structure. No?
Right.
Another one is a glandular structure, another glandular structure. So the syringoma will not have the keratocyst, and when you go to this has the keratocyst, and you don't actually see glands. What you see is this basaloid proliferation. If you look at them side by side, you'll see the difference actually. You see this one?
Right.
And then when you come to this one, this is more basaloid neoplasm that has this infiltrating basaloid and then scattered keratocyst actually. Any questions about this trichoepithelioma?
So this is the classic variant of trichoepithelioma, or this is the desmoplastic?
This is the desmoplastic one. Let's pull out a classic so we can talk about a classic variant of trichoepithelioma.
This looks different.
Yeah, so again you have a basaloid neoplasm actually. But now it doesn't have that infiltrating pattern. What do you see here actually?
Some islands, like basaloid cell islands.
Basaloid cell islands. So again that same thought process should go in your mind. For what is your main differential diagnosis?
Basal cell carcinoma.
Basal cell carcinoma. So again you go high power and you look for the features. Do I see palisading a little bit? Do I see clefting? No. Do I see any apoptosis? No. Do I see any mitotic figures? No. Do I see a myxoid stroma? No, actually. So at least then first you ruled out a basal cell carcinoma. So now you have something that looks very basaloid, but that is not a basal cell carcinoma. So what is your main differential diagnosis? One is going to be trichoepithelioma. The desmoplastic variant looks to what we saw, but what is the other feature that you would see in a trichoepithelioma? So where is trichoepithelioma arising from? From the hair follicle. It's a hair follicle neoplasm, because you saw the keratocyst, the hair follicle cyst that you saw there in the other one. So when you look at a hair follicle, what do you normally see at the base? This is not the complete hair follicle, but if you saw a complete hair follicle, what would you see at the base? Let's try to find a hair follicle. Or let's go to the PowerPoint and I don't have the base here. I was trying to show you what. So what do you see at the base here actually? What is this part of the hair follicle called? This dermal papillae. This part is known as the papillary mesenchymal body. No? This whole thing is known as the papillary mesenchymal body. So what do you have in the papillary mesenchymal body? You have the basaloid nest and the dermis going within the basaloid nest. This is the papillary mesenchymal body. So you are going to see similar structures within the trichoepithelioma. That will tell you that this is arising from the hair follicle. Here. So this is the lower part of the hair bulb, and this is the dermal papillae going within the hair bulb actually. You can see, does this look like the lower part of the hair follicle?
Yeah, it does.
So like this is known as the papillary mesenchymal body actually, and this is another characteristic feature that you're going to see in a trichoepithelioma, a papillary mesenchymal body. See, these terms are going to be new to you, but what you have to do is write notes down, look at these slides, and then go back, open up your books, read about this, and then you can always come back to the slide, because now these slides are available online anytime. You can come back and look at them actually. And the only way to get used to these diagnoses is by again and viewing them again and again actually. So you read about them, what are the features? So basaloid neoplasm in a fibrotic stroma. So once you on low power, you know it is a basaloid neoplasm in a very fibrotic stroma. So first I ruled out a basal cell carcinoma. What are my other differential diagnoses? So this is not the tricholemoma because that was composed of more clear cells. So then the other option is a trichoepithelioma. And in the trichoepithelioma, you want to see this papillary mesenchymal bodies and the keratocyst. This one doesn't have the keratocyst, but in other lesions you are going to see the keratocyst. Let's find another one. So this is another trichoepithelioma. This is the same one actually. So this one has huge keratocyst in them. See, all these are keratocysts.
So the keratocyst is a classic finding in trichoepithelioma, or it can be found
in any hair follicle. The only thing it is telling trichoepithelioma because that is the only hair follicle neoplasm that can look like this. But when it becomes very desmoplastic, then you call it a desmoplastic trichoepithelioma. And when it is very classic like this, and they all look very classic like this. Like if you pull out 15 cases of trichoepithelioma, 10 are going to look like this actually. So you just have to like make a picture in your brain that this is how it's going to look actually. Because you look at it when you look at it the first time, it is very difficult to comprehend and put your hand around it. That will I be able to make this diagnosis again actually? And that is the reason, like I try to like tell you like what are the features that you want to first rule out basically. So once you have ruled it out, then you are left with very little options. Now I ruled out the basal cell carcinoma, and let's say you are in practice, trying to be more practical. You are like 5 years down your practice, and you want to you get this biopsy actually, and you have to make a diagnosis. What if it is a trichoepithelioma? The clinician doesn't have to do anything actually. So even if you miss the diagnosis, it's not going to be a big deal actually. What is going to be a big deal is not missing a basal cell carcinoma. So very important is like how do I rule out a basal cell carcinoma, and then if you have ruled out a basal cell carcinoma, then even if you call it a basaloid adnexal neoplasm with benign features going to the base, and you don't remember the name at that time 5 years down the line, because you haven't done a lot of dermatopathology at that time, you are still okay basically. So like important thing is how do I first rule out a basal cell carcinoma, and then till your boards you have to remember that I have to remember the name trichoepithelioma, because on the board you cannot call this a benign basaloid neoplasm. You have to give it a name actually. So if you are going to give it a name trichoepithelioma, what are the features that you want to look for? One is the fibrotic stroma, second is the keratocyst, and third is this papillary mesenchymal body actually. And what is the papillary mesenchymal body? It is a basaloid, like a moon-shaped, semi-lunar moon-shaped basaloid proliferation with dermis going inside it actually. That is known as the papillary mesenchymal body, and it recapitulates the lower part of the hair bulb. So this is the lower part of the hair bulb, where this is the basaloid part, and this is the dermis going inside the lower part of the hair bulb actually. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a classic. What is this one? So like again, what is the neoplasm? It is a basaloid neoplasm. Okay, hair follicle. So it is a basaloid neoplasm. So again, you go through the same features, but what are the very classic thing that you're seeing here actually?
Keratocyst.
Keratocyst actually. So now you know you're most likely dealing with a no mitosis, no apoptosis, keratocyst, and this is a, you can see the papillary mesenchymal body actually. So this is just a regular. This is sometimes this is like the normal hair follicle. The normal hair follicle, you're going to see the basaloid nest and the stroma there actually. And this one also has this basaloid nest and the stroma going within it actually. So what is this?
Trichoepithelioma.
Trichoepithelioma. Right? So this is a trichoepithelioma. You have to just keep looking at these cases to come to a diagnosis actually. This is a regular trichoepithelioma. So lobules of basaloid cells surrounded by a very mature fibrotic stroma. It has this keratinous microcyst. We'll have the mesenchymal papillary bodies, which has the ball and claw. Mitosis are minimal and absent, and you don't have apoptotic figures. So these are all the things that should go through your mind before you make the diagnosis of trichoepithelioma. And like I said, the differential diagnosis is going to be infiltrative basal cell carcinoma and microcystic adnexal carcinoma. And if you don't see the base, you call it a sclerosing basaloid neoplasm extending to the base. Go back and take it out. The trichoepithelioma, this is a microcystic adnexal carcinoma. So look at the pattern, very somewhat similar, but very infiltrated. And this is a basal cell carcinoma. So when you go high power in this, you're going to see a lot of mitosis and apoptosis and all that, which you are not going to see in the trichoepithelioma. Any questions?
Thank you.
So large nodular lesion on the foot. So what do we see here?
It's again some inward proliferation of
basaloid cells.
Yeah. But here there is no skin-like structures are not there. Sorry, hair follicle.
There is no hair follicular structures, anything here. So mostly it is composed of this basaloid, somewhat clear-looking cells actually. So let's go to a slide actually. So like 2 or 3 features now. So one, you have this endophytic growth pattern composed of this basaloid cells, but then all the features are absent. No palisading, no mitosis, no clefting, no cyst. So the basal cell is ruled out actually. Now if we on the another very striking feature on this low power is what is the stroma that you see associated with this one? What does the stroma contain?
Vessels.
So there's a lot of blood vessels. So if you see something like this and if the stroma contains a lot of blood vessels, the first thought that should come to your mind is poroma actually. So what is that? This is an eccrine poroma. So what are the features of a poroma? Basaloid neoplasm composed of somewhat clear cells with a lot of blood vessels in the stroma. Now, what is the other feature? So let's go high power and look at the edge of the lesion actually.
Continuity with the epidermis, is it?
Yeah, continuity with the epidermis, but still you can see there's a sharp demarcation actually. Look at the sharp demarcation here. So this is the neoplasm. This is the epidermis. The color is different. Do you see the different color?
Yeah.
So you have to always go to the edge and try to see if it is like separate from the epidermis. It looks like on low power, it looks very continuous with the epidermis. But when you go high power, you're going to see that the epidermis is different and the neoplasm is different. Very sharp demarcation. And then what are the other structures that you're going to see in this one? This is an eccrine poroma. So if it is an eccrine neoplasm, what are the other structures that you're going to see? You're going to see some ducts. So then you just have to go and look for ducts within the neoplasm actually. And if you don't see the ducts, you can do a CEA and then you can highlight these ducts actually. So the immunostain to use to highlight the ducts is as seen. Let's pull out other slides. So this is another one. Again, look at the stroma. A lot of blood vessels. Look at the sharp demarcation there. You see the sharp demarcation here? This is normal epidermis. This is the normal epidermis, and then there is a very sharp demarcation. The stroma contains a lot of blood vessels. And then when you look for ducts, you're going to find these ductular structures actually. Let's look at another one. Again, like what does the stroma contain? A lot of vessels. You see this basiloid neoplasm. What the mind doesn't know, the eyes are not going to see actually. So you have to know like what am I looking for actually. So you have to first think of poroma. Like unless you don't think of poroma, then you're not going to look for features of poroma. And the only way to get good at this is like trying to see more and more cases. The more cases you see, the better you'll become at. Again, the sharp demarcation at the edge. Look at this, the sharp demarcation at the edge. A lot of blood vessels in the stroma actually. And then you're going to look for ducts. If you don't see the ducts, you can do a CEA to highlight the ducts actually. So this is an eccrine poroma.
So ducts should be part of the lesion inside, like
within the tumor actually. This is another one here. So it can also have, it can even like go into the dermis actually, but it always starts from the epidermis actually. So there again you can see the basilar neoplasm, a lot of blood vessels in the stroma, and then sharp demarcation from the normal epidermis. See the sharp demarcation? Look at this lesion and this is the normal epidermis. Again, very sharp demarcation actually. And the blood vessels in the stroma. So yeah, you can always use this website. Like if you just, what you have to do is just go to Path Presenter, log in, like register and log in. And once you log in, search library, and then you just put in whatever diagnosis you want basically. So if you put in poroma, and then click search, it's going to pull out multiple slides of that entity actually. And then you just look at all the slides. So if you have your book with you, you open up your book and then you just display, and there you have your slide. You can do this on your iPad, you can do this on your phone, wherever, whatever you want to do it actually. And the only way is read and look at the slide, read and look at the slide. Try to match the features actually. So
So this tumor, like this slide that you are showing now. So can one confuse it with nodular hydroadenoma?
The nodular hydroadenoma is a very similar entity, but more in the dermis. It's more in the dermis, and I'll let me pull out a slide because right now it's better to show it to you right now. So then the other very in the what kind of stroma did we describe in a poroma? Vessels actually. And when you look at a heteroadenoma, the stroma is always very sclerotic. So heteroadenoma, if you look at the stroma, you don't see the vessel. What do you see is a very sclerotic. But it can be like the other both are eccrine neoplasms. One is arising in the top part of the eccrine duct, and the other is arising from the lower part of the eccrine duct. So they are arising from the same structure, so they can look very similar actually. But the stroma in a poroma always contains a lot of blood vessels, and the stroma within a heteroadenoma contains a lot of sclerotic structures actually. Let's look at another one.
And cell morphology, like there is difference?
Cell morphology is also different. So I'll show you about this. So let's go to this. So this is a heteroadenoma. So one, it is like what is the other name of a heteroadenoma? What is the complete name of a heteroadenoma? Is nodular and cystic heteroadenoma. That is how it is described. Nodular and cystic heteroadenoma. So like as the name says, it is nodular. So big nodules in the dermis, and usually they are cystic actually. So you're always going to see some cysts. So nodular and cystic heteroadenoma, and then the cells look very similar, but the stroma, look at the stroma, it is very sclerotic actually. And then the cell types can be different. It can be this basaloid cells, you can have mucinous cells, or you can have some clear cells. So it can have basaloid, mucinous, and clear cells within the lesion actually. 3 types of cells within a heteroadenoma.
But you can have ducts in hydroadenoma also, right? Like
yeah, because it is an eccrine neoplasm, so you always have to find the ducts. The ducts are always going to be there. Okay. So let's go to the slide and look for the ducts actually. So when you start looking at this carefully, is it open? Let me close it. So like, let's look at this one carefully. If you like go through the whole lesion, you're definitely going to find the ducts actually. But the stroma, look at the stroma, very, very sclerotic. And if you don't see the ducts, you can always do a CEA, and the CEA is going to highlight the ducts actually. But if I look at this very carefully on a high power, I'm definitely going to find the ducts here actually. So nodular and cystic neoplasm, that is mostly in the dermis, composed of basaloid cells, can have admixed clear cells and mucinous cells, and then very sclerotic stroma. And then the other thing is the admixed ducts actually. So that is a nodular heteroadenoma. And these can be on your boards because these are like very straightforward diagnoses. So you can always get slides of these on the board. So the only way to learn about these cases is try to look at as many cases as you can actually. So, and now we have all these repositories available online, and these are free cases for you to view at actually. So now you don't even have to look at static images. You can actually now just look at these slides whenever you want to look at them actually. Just go to this and this is not only skin actually, even for your other parts of pathology. See, bone and soft tissue, breast, cytology, cardiac, everything is there actually. So for all your organ systems, you just go into the system and then just search cases basically. Once you search, it's going to pull out a lot of cases actually. This is hidradenoma and gastrointestinal, so it won't come up. See, like thousands of cases of GI also. Whatever you want to look for, basically. So let's go back to our presentation. So we were on Roma. So we'll do one more case and then we'll have continue next time actually.
Sure.
But read about these cases. Unless you read about them, you're never going to remember. You'll just like when you go out of this lecture, you'll completely forget. So like we didn't discuss too many entities. If you just go back and read those entities and go back and try to look at the specific features that I'm talking about, because those are the only features that are going to help you make that specific diagnosis. And like I keep stressing, what the mind doesn't know, the eyes are not going to see. You have to first know the name of the diagnosis. Dermatopathology, when as a resident, you feel that it is too overwhelming because there are a lot of new names that come up actually. But if you make a list of all the diagnoses, it is a maximum of around 600 diagnoses. So it's not a lot of diagnoses. So benign adnexal neoplasm presents as a red, slightly scaly nodule. Most poromas, they occur on the palms and the soles, but they can occur in other areas. And they are derived from the eccrine duct. Now this is another lesion that is not on the palms and the soles, but again has the similar feature actually. So what do we see here? So this is again the epidermis, because this is the part of the epidermis here. But you see another very basaloid neoplasm. So let's go. What are the features here now? What is the stroma again? A lot of vessels actually. And then you have this basaloid neoplasm, and there are even scattered ducts actually. But now what is different from the last one actually? So this is the last one and this is this one. They have very similar morphology, but what is different in the two? Cytologic features. So this is very benign looking and this is not benign, because this is a lot hyperchromatic nuclei, and if I go high power and start looking, I'm going to find a lot of mitosis. So if I see a lot of mitosis, I see a lot of pleomorphism. Look at this big cell here. You see this big cell here? Hyperchromatic big nucleus, but something that looks like a poroma. So if it's something that looks like a poroma but is atypical, then it becomes a
Porocarcinoma.
Porocarcinoma. So again the same features. Basaloid neoplasm in the epidermis, has this stroma like vascular stroma, has the ducts, but then the cytology is pretty atypical compared to a normal poroma. So this is a porocarcinoma, and porocarcinoma is the most frequent encountered malignant placid gland neoplasm. So you have to know that one actually. So again, you are going to see the continuity with the epidermis with broad pushing anastomosing bonds, and then asymmetrical pore circumscribed growth. So let's pull out a slide now. So this is the same slide that you have pictures of actually. So like you can also, like when you want to take pictures, all you need to like go to the library, search library, pull out a slide, and then like if you want a picture at this power, there is a button that says camera. You see the snapshot. Just take a snapshot and you can easily take a picture basically. So there is a picture now. So it's easy to take a picture. So like let's go back to the features now again. So like I said, it is still like an epidermal neoplasm composed of basaloid cells, has blood vessels in the stroma, but the cytology is pretty atypical actually. Look at all this hyperchromatic nuclei. This is a mitosis here. There's another tripolar mitosis here. So you know you're dealing with a atypical neoplasm actually. And the most common neoplasm in this adnexa is the porocarcinoma. So when you start seeing all these atypical features, the diagnosis becomes easy. So what is your main differential diagnosis?
BCC again.
Or squamous cell carcinoma, because of the epidermal growth pattern. So how do you make sure this is not squamous cell carcinoma? Like normally, like in this biopsy, you don't see it, but if this patient had multiple biopsies, what you're going to see, like when you move out of the lesion, you're going to see very normal looking epidermis. So like let's go to your, look at this epidermis here. This is normal epidermis, and then suddenly you see the growth pattern, atypical. That is not a feature of squamous cell carcinoma. Squamous cell carcinoma cannot have very sharp demarcation between normal and atypical. There's always going to be a, what do you call it? You'll see atypia, then you'll see an AK at the edge, and then you're going to see the normal skin. Here there is no AK at the edge. What is the other feature in squamous cell carcinoma that you always see basically on the top? What do you see on the top of a squamous cell carcinoma? A lot of parakeratosis. No? When you look at a squamous cell carcinoma, let's go to squamous cell carcinoma. See, like all this parakeratosis on the top is very characteristic, and like when the squamous cell carcinoma, then it will like always show some atypia going at the periphery. Look at the AK going at the periphery, which is not present in the porocarcinoma.
Will the treatment be different or what?
This is a more aggressive neoplasm, so you have to treat it more aggressively. The porocarcinoma. People have died because of porocarcinoma, and this can metastasize more commonly than a squamous cell carcinoma. So, and there are no stains. That the only stain that can help you out is a CEA. So, if you want to, like, if you do a CEA, the porocarcinoma is going to show you a lot of admixed ducts, which are not going to be present in the squamous cell carcinoma. So, there's a duct here. There's another duct here. There's another duct here. There's another duct here. So, all these are ductular structures. And they're usually lined by cuticle. So, the CEA highlights the cuticle of the duct. So there's a cuticle here that is highlighted by the CEA. Adnexal neoplasms are tough, so you have to like keep looking at them and then try to get your hands around all the diagnoses actually. At least get the common ones. We are only discussing the common ones. We are not discussing the uncommon ones actually. Porocarcinoma is the most common atypical adnexal neoplasm. So at least you should know the most common ones actually. That's it. I don't want to go into like there. Like we have a lot of cases here.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
But there's no point. Later it will get you mixed up actually. So if we go slowly, the only condition is if you should go back and read. Otherwise, this all is going to go totally waste actually. So there are like 28 cases here, 29 cases here. That will cover the entire.
Could you share your presentation?
Yeah, I'll share it. So where do you want me to put it?
Just send an email if it is possible to send an email. Then we can share with everybody.
I'll put it on Dropbox and then share it with Dropbox with you. I think with the email it might not go through actually. So I'll send my Dropbox link to Rifat and then Rifat can forward it to everybody.
Okay, on Google Drive.
Or Google Drive, I can do that. And then for the website, you already know how to use it actually, and so you can go and see all the cases there actually. And I just showed you how easy it is actually. So you just have to go to your login and then not even make a presentation, just search library actually, and all the cases are there actually. Okay, have a nice day.
Thank you. Thank you.